Let me guess why you're here. You've completed Desert Treasure 2, killed all 4 bosses, found out what the Desert Treasure was, and went about your day. Spacebarring through all the dialogue, not really taking anything in, with the biggest shock being the sandwich lady turning out to be an assassin. Then you think, wait, what actually happened in that quest? I killed things and got 10 bronze chain bodies as a drop, but what was the story about? Well, that's why I'm here, to help you recap a bit. Just before we get into it, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who subscribed. We've gotten over 50 subs since the Runescape content has started, and I'm made up to have you all here with me. And if you haven't yet, if you do enjoy the video, please do consider subscribing. It would help out the channel a lot. But anyway, let's get into some lore. Looking at the quest requirement for Desert Treasure 2 will probably make you sweat a bit, but honestly, once you do them, you'll never have to do them again. Unless you make an Iron Man or do any limited time game modes, but we can cross that bridge when we come to it. In this section I'll focus on the specifics for the quest, about the bosses and the journey that we take on this quest. If you would like to learn more about the history of the Zarosian Empire, feel free to take a look at my video here. As with any great adventure, we travel to an ancient vault northeast of Narda, and enter the temple-like structure, entering a room that contains 4 statues of some peculiar looking beings. Right behind us is a familiar face, Gielinior Smith, proposing another partnership after having found no treasure with us the last time we worked together. Obviously, we agree, and we read the plaques on all the statues, and they give us 4 names: Vardorvis, Perseriya, Duke Sucellus, and the Whisperer. Making our way to the dig site, we speak to Dr. Bannakin, who informs us of a new discovery that we need to investigate, and once we do, we're faced with an ancient golem protector that we quickly dispatch. Within this dig site, Dr. Bannakin follows us and we power the inner golem machine, letting us search for specific terms relating to the ancient empire. See the list on screen, but we're going to focus on the 4 names we've heard before. And just to reiterate, this is not a quest guide by any means, so I won't be delving into strategies for the bosses I'm going to talk about. Instead, I'm delving into the lore for the specific characters. Embarking on a journey to find Carnifex Maximus Vardorvis, or just Vardorvis. We head towards Zaya and the Kingdom of Great Korend, the Lovacaine district to be exact. We witness the Burning Man monument, where a local historian explains the history and how the great evil the statue represents came from a place named the Stranglewood, and how a botanist from Hesidius had went there recently and ended up missing. We inspect the botanist's house to gather some clues, before making our way south of Mount Quidamortham, embarking on a rowboat ride into the Stranglewood. Vardorvis is an ancient vampire who served as the Carnifex Maximus of the Zarosian Empire, whose role can only be described as an executioner. He was one of the 4 individuals entrusted with a medallion to open the ancient vault. During the Third Age, after the betrayal of Zaros, he was deployed in Lassar to defend the fortress from a siege from Saradominist forces, including that of the Incando dwarves who had pledged their allegiance to Saradomin after being promised a new settlement after their previous home of Incandoria was destroyed. During the siege, the Saradominist leader, Yonrith Lovacaine, decided to flee west of his closest allies after being cornered by Vardorvis, and settled in what would now become modern-day Lovacaine. Wounded with pride, as Yonrith was the first to escape his axe, Vardorvis took a small force with him and pursued him across the seas, making a camp in the Stranglewood. A few days into their pursuit, the Venators that accompanied Vardorvis had found the Incando dwarves. Though as fate would fall out of favour with the vampire, his downfall would come in the form of an infection. One of Vardorvis' subordinates had gotten a sample of the Strangler to study it and ended up accidentally infecting Vardorvis, which removed his natural vampiric immunity. Though the infection slowly began to take hold, he pressed on and began preparations to attack the dwarves, though this would be short-lived, as the dwarves would attack first. The dwarves ambushed the camp after having found the Venator's tracks and took Vardorvis' head clean off, though one detail in the tatty pages does state how several legionnaires saw his decapitated body begin to move. Though he had died and been reanimated, his corpse settled into the ritual site and sat there for thousands of years. That is, until we came into the picture. Within the Stranglewood, we find multiple hostiles and infected people, before Kasson saves us and in turn, we protect him and help him. He explains what the Stranglewood is and how the Old Ones had created a parasite by accident. With his help, we create a potion that helps us become immune to the Strangler infection before going on to fight Vardorvis. killing him, we reclaim the medallion, and as we leave, he once again reanimates. Journeying into the Temple of the Eye next, we speak to the Great Guardian and are transported into the Scar, killing numerous demons and abyssal creatures before we encounter Wizard Perseriya. We speak to her within her camp and learn of her motivations of being in the Scar, and how they somehow line up with ours, as we're looking for Perseriya's ship. Though a mighty sea creature stands in our way, and to deal with it, we need to smoke it out. We set to work and set fire to numerous remnants of Perseriya's fleet, learning small bits of information as we proceed throughout the Scar. Perseriya was a siren who served with the rank of Praefectus Classis, which is a fancy way of saying fleet commander. During the Third Age, she was tasked with transporting an artifact by the name of the Imperium to the Far East, a task that would prove deadly. Not only did one legionary decide to interact with the artifact, but his meddling caused another legionary to go mad, causing a massacre amongst the troops. While both soldiers would end up being executed due to their insubordination, upon completion of the mission, the entire crew celebrated in Perseriya's ancestral home. Though, as you will learn within the quest, the artifact was a fake, with the real artifact being stored inside the private admiral's cabin. Under this guise, it would be transported to its true resting place, the ancient vault, and once this mission had truly been completed, Perseriya learned of the theft of the Stone of Jas by Saradomin forces, and how it was hidden underneath the Temple of the Eye, truly being hidden beneath the ocean south of Hallowvale. Despite this seemingly impossible challenge, she gave orders to prepare for a battle to reclaim it, and left with a small force, just enough to covertly infiltrate the temple before teleporting in a larger army. Though the battle for the Eye resulted in heavy losses on both sides, it was ultimately Perseriya's attempt to call in reinforcements that spelled defeat for her. Due to the presence of the stone, her spell to summon reinforcements was warped and ripped open a rift into the Scar, pulling in not only her entire fleet, but a Leviathan as well. One that would ultimately devour the Zarosian forces and need to be quelled with our blade. Slaying the Leviathan is no easy task, but we persevere and emerge victorious, rowing towards the remains of Perseriya's ship, finding her medallion and taking it with us. And now we're at my favourite one, the guy who drops the cutest pet in the game, am I right? The intro to this guy is pretty lengthy, involving you reenacting an episode of Prison Break, while you work with the assassin from a previous quest to escape. You'll get sent around all different parts of the prison and learn little bits about the fortress of Gorok, and Yalon will be chasing you. Think of it like an episode of Scooby-Doo. Once you deal with the Marjarat, you'll be told the asylum entrance is now open, allowing you to face Duke Sucellus of the 6th Legion. The Duke is a Chthonian demon who is the leader of the 6th Legion of Zaros, one of the 12 demonic legions from Infernus that was sent to Gielinior at the beginning of the Second Age. He held the rank of Legatus, which gave him command of an entire legion. He was another one of the 4 chosen commanders to hold a medallion to access the secret vault. During the Third Age, Sucellus was sent to Gorok after Zaros' betrayal, where he became the acting Legatus Maximus, the rank that Zamorak previously held and took command over what little forces remained of the once mighty empire. During his time in Gorok, he took in many refugees from the Empire who managed to escape there, though as the God Wars dragged on and the fortress became crowded, some humans who made their way there never left. Towards the end of the God Wars, Sucellus moved into the prison asylum and began ordering for preparations to return to the surface, though his actions would prove to be more and more suspicious as people kept disappearing, entering the asylum and never seeing the light of day again. This was down to Sucellus believing it was up to him to restore the Empire to its former glory. And how did he plan to do that? To eat everyone he could to absorb their essence and gain more power, which very evidently didn't work. Yalon and Mizark realised the threat that Sucellus posed and finally made plans to seal the prison, each taking one half of the Gorok crest used to ensure that the prison would never be opened again. Eventually, as Mizark would be sacrificed at one of the rituals, his crest ended up falling into Haziel's hands, and Sucellus was left in the asylum for thousands of years, consuming anyone unlucky enough to not have heard of the evacuation plans. Eventually, he fell into a deep slumber, until we wake him up to take his medallion to further proceed with our quest. The last medallion is found in the hands of the Whisperer. For this, we travel into the city of Kamdozal and proceed further than we've travelled before in this ruined city, venturing into the mines and climbing down into the depths to find a Lasar Undercity. Throughout the Undercity, we collect numerous schematics and jump between our realm and the Shadow Realm to try and face the Whisperer, using the schematics and the friendly Imkando dwarf named Kettler to make numerous devices to help us traverse parts of the city, saving off the voices of the silent choir, which are driving Kettler slightly mad. And we even have a trippy LSD-like experience, though we eventually manage to breach the shadow barrier leading into the sunken cathedral. The Whisperer, whose true name is unknown as it was classified, was a high-ranking member of the Zarosian Empire with a classified rank. Kinda like the James Bond of the Empire, it seems. She was a siren who was deployed into Lasar during the Third Age. Prior to her being stationed at Lasar, there were experiments being made on a mysterious totem made of blackstone within the Undercity, with notes describing it to be extremely dangerous, even requiring Slisk to enact protective measures on the totem. Findings show that it strengthened the connection of the Shadow Realm within the area. Eventually, the Whisperer ordered Slisk to remove the protection and seal the Undercity off to thoroughly experiment with it, and following this order, they killed the High Magister of Lasar and removed the protective barriers. The removal of the protective measures caused many of the inhabitants to go insane, falling to the corruption of the totem, eventually driving the Whisperer to her doom as well. She would submerge herself beneath the waves of the cathedral and remain undisturbed until we decided to disrupt her slumber. We kill her, utilising the Blackstone fragment to switch between the Shadow Realm and the real world multiple times, and comb through her entrails to retrieve the last medallion. We return the last medallion and are knocked unconscious by the mysterious figure who has given us multiple warnings throughout the quest, and even disguised themselves as a sandwich lady to ambush us once. Though we're imprisoned, we end up escaping and fighting him once and for all, allowing us to move to the finale of this quest. We return back to the ancient vault and see Asgarnia Smith start to argue with us about the treasure, before he throws a smoke bomb at us, leaving us dazed. Once we regain our senses, we follow him down into the vault and come upon him staring at the sight of a giant horn, with us believing it to be the Frostenhorn. Though shortly after Dr. Banneken appears, and reveals himself to be none other than Azanadra. This is where he explains that the horn is actually the Elder Horn, an ancient artifact that grants absolute control over those who hear its sound, being capable of subjugating entire armies without lifting a finger. This leads us to realise that it's the artifact that we learn to be the Imperium that Perseriya delivered to the east, which must have been a fake one, and she had always meant to seal the real one in the vault we find ourselves in. Haziel appears and informs us that the Frostenhorn was destroyed in Gorok prison, which makes two more Marjarat appear as well, like one super awkward family reunion. Though this does prompt one of them to realise that Asgarnia Smith isn't a human at all, throwing a spell at him, which causes his guys to slip, showing his true face, that of the treacherous serpent Slisk. This is where Slisk reveals that he had planned to take the Elder Horn from the very beginning, and had assumed the identities of multiple characters we spoke to along the very long journey, playing us right into his hands at every turn. All of this just to test our strength so we could become one of his wights. He continues and implores that the sacrificial ritual that the Marjarat perform ever so often is not sustainable and will cause their extinction, and explains how he will use the Elder Horn to break the cycle, which causes two of the Marjarat to argue and fight each other, while Slisk summons the Barrows brothers to distract Haziel and Azanadra. We turn our sights to Slisk, though he summons wights of the four major characters we met on the journey. One by one, we kill the Forsaken Assassin, Kettler the Unworthy, Gasson the Craven, and Person the Deceitful, which leads us into a false sense of victory. As we lift our eyes once again to stare down Slisk, we witness him complete his teleportation spell on the Elder Horn, and it vanishes in the blink of an eye, telling us how we'll make a worthy vessel, and that we will meet him again in the north, before teleporting away himself. This leaves us with the remaining Marjarat, who bicker and leave to inform their respective allies of the developments that have unfolded, with Azanadra apologising for his deceptions but commenting now that we are intertwined with the Marjarat's dealings whether we like it or not. Desert Treasure 2 was an immensely enjoyable experience, honestly, running all around Gielinior in search of the medallions, visiting lands far and wide, and most importantly trying to avoid death while we run back to the vault. Ultimately, I think Jagex have done an amazing job and I can't wait to see more quests that they bring out in the future. It'll be amazing to see what they do with the lore and how they expand further on the Marjarat questline. What's going on in the north? What ritual are they speaking of? I'll cover all of that eventually, as they're important questions to answer. I do hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please do like and subscribe. And if there's anything you want me to cover, please do let me know down in the comments below. But for now, thanks for watching, and see you next time.